Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So it's time to go through my September reading wrap up, and once again I have been putting off filming this video because somehow I managed to read 14 books in September. Don't quite know how that happened. I think I read a lot shorter books in September, so my actual page count was around average, but yeah, I read 14 books last month. I'm not going to talk about all of the books in a lot of detail. I'm going to do what I usually do and go through the list of books that I read and what I rated them. Then I'll pick out a few to talk through in more detail, but there will be timestamps in the description just in case you would like to skip ahead. Also, I'm filming this quite late in the evening and the lighting is probably not the best, but we're just going to roll with it because I have a few busy weekends coming up and the evenings are the only time I can film in the week really, and it's getting dark at night, so yeah, hopefully this is all okay. The first book that I finished in September, which I think I might have mentioned in my October wrap up, was The Stone Sky by NK Jemison, which is the last book in the Broken Earth series. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I then read Blood of Dragons by Hobb, which is the fourth and final book in the Rainwild Chronicles and the 13th book in the Realm of the Outlandings overall, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. I really liked the ending, but this was a bit of a slog. Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors I gave 4 stars. Trust by Hernan Diaz I gave 2 stars. Twisted Hate by Huang, which is the 3rd book in the Twisted series, I gave 3 stars. Kill for Me, Kill for You by Cavanagh I gave 3.5 stars. Murder in the Family by Cara I gave 4 stars. Then The Roommate Risk by Talia Hibbert I also gave 4 stars. And The Soulmate Equation by Christina I gave 4 stars. I had a bit of a run of 4 stars in the middle of the month. Then Teach Me by Olivia Dade I gave 3.5 stars. Trespasses by Louise I gave 5 stars, and I think this was my favourite book of the month. There was another book which I gave like a 4.5 stars, which was also a favourite, but yeah, 5 stars, really enjoyed this one. They Never Learn by Layne Fargo I gave 4 stars. Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca I gave 3 stars, I think. And then Our Wives Under the Sea was the last book I read that month, and I gave this 4.5 stars, maybe even a 5 stars because I can't stop thinking about this book. But this was the other favourite book that I read in September. So I guess we should move on to talk about some of these in more detail, and I think the first book that I want to talk about is Kill for Me, Kill for You by Cavanagh. So this is a thriller about a woman whose name I can't remember. Amanda is her name, and she has been going through a really bad time recently. Her daughter was killed around 6 months ago, and she attends this grief counselling session where she meets a woman called Wendy, I think is her name, and they strike up a friendship, and eventually it turns into them agreeing to murder the person that the other woman blames for ruining their life. So it's a strangers on a train situation where they agree to swap targets and murder on behalf of each other, so the other person can ensure that they've got an alibi in case they're ever accused. I don't know if I did the best job of explaining that, but this I thought was okay. It was quite heavy on the discussions of grief in the beginning, and then it went in a direction that I didn't really like, and I really didn't like the very end. There was a lot of stuff that felt really convenient, and there's this problem that I've been having with thrillers recently where it feels like I'm expected to suspend disbelief too much, to the point where it feels unrealistic, and I couldn't help but compare this to The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson, which I read quite recently, and that has a similar sort of setup where it's very loosely inspired by strangers on a train, and I felt like it did it so much better than this. So yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars because it was still compulsively readable, and I do quite like Steve Cavanagh's writing, so I will continue to pick up other books by him, but I prefer his Eddie Flynn series. I think I just prefer it when he writes courtroom drama and like legal thrillers. This just didn't quite work for me, but I think if you have been interested in this book and you like a revenge story, then I would still recommend giving it a go. It was very fast-paced and action-packed, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, then I think you might enjoy this one. Next on my list is Murder in the Family by Cara Hunter, which is another thriller that I actually read in the same reading vlog as Kill for Me, Kill for You, so I'll try and remember to leave that linked in the cards and in the description, but I really enjoyed Murder in the Family. I have read other books by Cara Hunter, which I also liked. This one I gave 4 stars because the ending really confused me. Obviously I won't go into it because of spoilers, but there was something really addictive about this book, and it moved quite quickly because it's told in multimedia, and the biggest criticism that I've seen on Goodreads is people not liking the multimedia. I think it's something that you either love or you don't. I really liked it. I really liked how it was structured like a TV show. So basically this is about a TV production company who are making a true crime documentary about this cold case from years ago. This guy was found murdered in the garden of this massive estate where he was living. The murderer was never found, so this production company have decided to reopen the case and interview people that were involved back then. So there's, I think, 5 or 6 experts that are brought on board to kind of try and solve this mystery. And the way that the book is structured is you have the set list. The set list, is that the right word? You basically have a script of the filming of each episode of this documentary, and then you also have newspaper articles and social media posts from people reacting to the episode. So it's told entirely in multimedia, is what I'm trying to say. And I really liked that. I thought that it was a really unique way of telling the story, and there were some twists in this book that I did not see come in, and I don't know why I was surprised, because I've read the D.I. Adam Fawley series by Cara Hunter, and that also has some really good twists, so I should have expected it, to be fair. But yeah, this was just a really fun reading experience. I really enjoyed trying to predict what direction it was going in, and I enjoyed trying to predict who was responsible and what happened back then. I think the main reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because I was very confused by the ending, and I don't think I loved certain things that happened with the ending. It seemed like, I don't know, things were wrapped up in a really strange way, and that's the only way I can explain it without spoilers. If you have read this book or you don't mind having spoilers, then I did write a review on Goodreads with my theory on something, because I feel like Cara Hunter was trying to say something with that ending without actually saying it, and I don't know whether I just made it up or whether I was reading too much into it, but yeah, I have decided that that was the intention. Whether I was right, I don't know, but maybe I should look into interviews with the author and see if I was completely wrong or whether I was right. Next up we have They Never Learn by Layne Fargo, which is another thriller, and this was good. However, I felt like it took me a while to get into this, and also it wasn't quite what I was expecting. I think I expected this to be more plot driven, and it turned out to be more character driven, which isn't my personal preference in thrillers. However, I did like it overall, and I did find it compulsively readable. So this is following an English professor called Scarlett, who works at this university, and every year she selects one victim that she's going to murder. So her thing is she kills men who she feels deserve it. If you like books about female rage, then you've probably already read this, but if you haven't, then it is one that I would recommend, because I could feel the rage coming off the pages. I wouldn't say that I liked Scarlett as a main character. However, I think I might have actually said this earlier. There's been a few thrillers that I've read recently where I felt like I've had to really suspend disbelief, and Scarlett was completely unhinged, don't get me wrong. I felt like the author did a good job of taking us inside her mind and helping us understand why she was doing what she was doing. I did have mixed feelings about this one overall. I gave it 4 stars, but it was probably closer to a 3.5 because I struggled with how character driven this was, and also I didn't love the ending. I don't think the ending was bad. I think that some people would love this ending, but I wanted a different outcome, and that's all I'm going to say because obviously I don't want to go into spoilers. I think if you do enjoy a good revenge plot and you enjoy books about female rage and obsession, then pick this one up. It also has some LGBTQ plus rep, which I really appreciated. I think this just wasn't my kind of thriller in the end, but I still enjoyed my time reading it. This next book I actually read for a reading vlog, which won't be coming out until later on this year, so I haven't actually spoken about it anywhere yet on my channel, but I wanted to talk about it in this wrap up because it was my favourite book, I think, of September, and it might be a favourite of the year, but it is Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. So this is historical fiction. It's set in Northern Ireland in the 1970s, and it follows a young woman called Kushla who's a teacher, but in the evenings she sometimes helps out in her family's pub, and it's there that she meets this older man. I think she's 24 and he's in his 40s or early 50s. He's also married, but they begin this affair. And he's also Protestant. I should have said that actually. That's actually really important to the plot of the book. But this is sometimes, I think, in reviews described as a love story. It actually says on the front, a heartbreaking story of forbidden love. I would disagree with that. I felt like this was a very realistic portrayal of something that could have happened. I didn't feel like this was romanticising their relationship. I found this really compulsively readable. I wasn't sure about the writing style at first because it's written without speech marks. I don't know if there's a name for that particular type of writing, but I know that Sally Rooney does the same thing, and so I was a little bit nervous when I first picked this up because it did jar me at first. I wasn't expecting it, but there was something about this story that really gripped me, and I don't even know whether it was the main character because obviously it's told from Kushla's perspective. I found her a little bit naive. However, again, I think that was done in a really realistic way because she is 24 at the start of this book, and I felt like the author captured her emotions and her thoughts and feelings really well. I don't know how else to explain this other than it did feel almost biographical in a way, but obviously told in a fiction style. What's really interesting is I was actually talking about this book with someone at work, and they actually DNF'd this. I think they got halfway through and found that it wasn't really gripping them and nothing was really happening. But I love books where nothing really happens and where it's more about the characters and the setting. And yeah, I found this a really interesting historical fiction. I love reading historical fiction that's set more in, I want to say, modern times, but obviously this was set in the 1970s, so before I was born. I've never read fiction set during the 1970s in Northern Ireland, and I found this a really interesting read. Next on my list is a book that I really struggled to talk about in the vlog where I read this book, and that is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. So this is a very short book. I think it's around 230 pages, and it's horror, but literary horror. So the horror elements aren't really the focus of the book, but they're also important to the story. So I think the way that I tried to explain this in that vlog is that this book could have been written without the horror elements, but I liked the way that the horror elements enhanced the story. So this is about a married couple, Leah and Miri. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Leah is a marine biologist, and she recently went on this underwater mission that went wrong. So she was meant to be away for, I think, a few weeks, and she ended up being away for 6 months. And her wife Miri was waiting for her at home. There's a timeline in the past where you're following Leah and you're seeing what happened, but then there's also the timeline in the present day following Miri as she is trying to adjust to Leah being home, and she's seeing that something isn't quite right, and she's trying to make sense of it, but also they're struggling to communicate. And this is really a book about their relationship. There's a lot about grief, and there were some beautiful passages in this that I really wanted to highlight. And I'm not someone who usually tabs or highlights books, but there were certain parts of this that I thought were just really beautifully written. The horror elements were really unsettling, and I really liked this. I feel like I'm not really doing it justice, and I think it is a book that's not going to work for everyone. It's very slow moving, and there's a review on the back that says it's like floating through water with your eyes open, and I think that's actually a really accurate way of describing the reading experience. It kind of sucked me in, and I couldn't stop reading at certain points, but also I wanted to take my time with it. I think if you like slow-paced books that have a lot of atmosphere and where you feel like you're sinking into it every time you pick it up, I think this could really work for you. I was surprised by how much I loved this, and I gave it 4.5 stars. The final book that I wanted to talk about in this wrap-up is my least favourite book of the month, and that was Trust by Hernan Diaz. So I read this for a reading vlog, the same reading vlog that's going to be coming out later this year, and I think if I hadn't been reading this for a vlog, and if I hadn't been on a train to Brighton with no Wi-Fi and no way of downloading any other book, then I possibly would have DNF'd this, because I hated the first half. Basically, this book is split into 4 sections, and all you really need to know about the plot is that this is about a married couple in New York in the 1920s, and the guy is a businessman who makes a lot of money during the Wall Street crash, and it makes him kind of infamous, but people don't understand how he was able to profit when so many other businesses were struggling. I am kind of glad that I finished this because I think once I had the full picture, I did appreciate what the author was trying to do, but I also think this relied on having a clever structure, but the actual substance wasn't compelling. I was so bored during the first section, and then the second section was also kind of dull, but it was also really short, so I got through it quickly. And then I really enjoyed the second half. Part 3 in particular I found really interesting, but yeah, overall this was a miss for me, unfortunately. It also at times read like non-fiction, which yeah, I wasn't expecting, and I was so disappointed because I love the 1920s New York. It's one of my favourite time periods and places to read about, but I didn't feel any atmosphere and I didn't really like the characters, apart from the wife. I thought she was really interesting, and then there was also another character that I liked later on in the book that I won't talk about because I don't want to go into too much detail, but yeah, wasn't a fan of this and I gave it 2 stars overall. I think that does bring me to the end of this wrap up though, so thanks for watching if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Also, I'm really sorry if my chair has been squeaking throughout this video. It's been annoying me probably as much as it's been annoying you, but yeah, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.